action. We want you to take it upon yourself to take a young girl under your wing before they get into trouble, or even after they've got into trouble, and redirect them. One of the resounding themes throughout our interviews with the stakeholders and community-based organizations was about mentorship, was about the girls having someone who felt them, who loved them, who cared for them enough to direct them.
Everybody needs to have a champion somewhere. And if they have one somebody that they can trust and depend on, and that person will be there for that young person no matter what.
The junior fire cadet program for the young elementary school kids involves life skill sets for young people at that age. We talked about how to voice self-destructive behavior. The one we did for the girls is very interesting. When the school approached me about doing the program, they knew that we were successful doing an all-boy program. So they wanted a program for the girls, and we crafted one. And what we did was we brought in professional black women that were from various backgrounds. We had a police officer, we had an administrator for a assisted living home, we had a real estate broker and property manager come in and talk to the girls about various aspects of just life skills. The one session that we did with the young ladies that was most beneficial and they loved the most was how to be a lady. And our facilitator for that was an administrator, a single mother, that was really interested and engaged in helping the young ladies. And she said, you could tell which young ladies' mothers talked to them about growing up and which ones didn't. So the girls really got a lot out of it. We even did teamwork. We did some team building skills with them. We did some relay racing with them and taught them about good sportsmanship. So the girls really enjoyed the program. And we all agreed on one thing. We all agreed that girls are smarter than boys.
I think mentoring is highly effective. I think there is a challenge in getting people that want to work with the population, but it's a very effective component of programs because you have someone that, if it's done right, can really relate to that youth and draw a connection with that youth and possibly provide some stability and direction that they didn't have. You allow them an opportunity to possibly get out of the community and see other things, but also be able to relate that back to their community. So look at maybe this person grew up in the same community that I did or situation, and they were able to navigate their way through it. So you give them that one person, because research does show if a youth has one person that they identify as cares about them, the likelihood of them being involved in the juvenile justice system or being involved in delinquent behavior is reduced.
Or you admire?
My mom.
Why?
Because she went through a lot of struggles when I was little because of my dad, and she got through them, and she told me, she doesn't need a man. Oh, she went through a lot of things when I was little with my dad, and now she's doing really good. She said that she doesn't need a man. She just needs herself and her kids and her grandson, which is my baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's in a whole better state now than what she was before.
And were you able to see that transition for her?
Yeah.
Yeah. She learned a lot.
She learned a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She was hard-headed. She didn't want to leave the situation because I guess she loved my dad so much. But once she's like, okay, I have to do this for my kids. It's not all about me. She left, and everything came out for the best.
Even though my mother passed away and I really didn't have a relationship with her, people told me she was the most sweetest person you ever meet. She would go places and buy a homeless man or woman a whole meal, buy them some clothes, let them take a shower, probably spend the night, I don't know everything, but I knew my mother was a very sweet woman. When we were able to talk, she would ask me my mom has 7 kids, I was the 5th one, and she had probably like 2 girls. She had another one, but she was a baby, so it was Kamari and me. Kamari wanted to be a dancer, and she wanted to see if someone could sing in the family except her. So everybody looked to me, and they asked, can you sing? And probably I used to sing like Twinkle Little Star or sing my alphabets, but she knew that I could sing because me and her would sing on the phone together. She would ask me, do you know this song? I will sing the gospel song. we fall down or something. Yeah, we used to always sing that song on the phone. So basically, my mother.
This one young woman came in, and she was in the sheltering arms, and I have an agreement with them to bring 3 of their people in a year and let them volunteer, and if I have an opening, I usually hire. Well, this young woman was brilliant. She had never worked in an office in her life. The only thing she had ever done is worked at McDonald's and in motels, and not nice motels, not sleazy motels, changing beds. So I hired her, and she just, this girl was just excelled, up. So then Drew had an opening, and so I wanted to get her into the Drew system. I need you to know that we had to walk on water and commit miracles. Dr. Keith Norris and I and a number of other people had to take and encourage Drew University to put her on their staff and let her work. She is now a program specialist. Rand Corporation, UCLA, believe this young woman should go to school and get her PhD.
And what was her background?
She was a prostitute. She committed prostitution when she was a teenager.
Some of the young people I work with today still walk up to me in the street and say, hey, if it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have made it. It's quite daunting to have a young lady with a 5-year-old little boy who's like 19 to 20, and you ask them, what's your future like? What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 or 10 years? They say, well, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to be living. And it just really breaks your heart.
Well, I think we have to really enlist our community helpers, our nonprofits, our churches, and people have to work together. The impediment that I see is people care, people want to help young people, but they don't want to take on the full responsibility themselves. So if people can work in groups, so that if you say you have 3 members of a church who say, we're going to be mentors for Sylvia, if Sylvia is an at-risk 12-year-old. Nobody has to adopt me, nobody has to take care of me every night, but I've got 3 people who are going to say, I'm interested in where you are, what you're doing, what your challenges are, and we each want to be there to help you.
Instead of it looking like this one system has to fix it, this one system has to fix it, it has to be a village approach.
I have some very personal feelings about the privatizing of prisons, and some of them go back to President Clinton, who, when he took office, vowed to reduce the federal employment rolls. And one of the ways he did that was to encourage the privatizing of prisons. What we've done is that we've made prisons, the building and maintaining of prisons and inmates at one point was the largest growing industry in this country, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. What that means is that we are all in a situation where at any point in time, whether you've done anything or not, you can be picked up and charged and convicted of something that you didn't necessarily do, because this country now and the corporation is about making money. They're selling prison stock on Wall Street.
It's against the law to use prisoner labor to build commercial products. So therefore, we don't do that in the county jails, and we don't even do that in state prisons. What we have to do is prepare the person to have the social and what I'd call human skills to be trustworthy and reliable. And that's what employers want. There's too many nuances to specific jobs that can only be done in terms of being trained on the job. But the skill to get into that training phase for that company is what we all recall as being the way we got to where we are. You know, even when I got hired at the Sheriff's Department, we had to go to the academy. I didn't have any skills to be a deputy sheriff. but I had the integrity, the will, and the willingness to put up with the conditions of the job in order to make myself developed to the job's requirements. But you have to follow all these guidelines, and so we teach people how to do that because they're basically learning how to manage themselves. And you can't manage a job if you can't manage yourself.
Dr. Michelle Alexander calls it the new Jim Crow. What we're talking about is not just incarceration. We're talking about mass incarceration. We're talking about people being literally taken off the street, disappeared into prisons. And the situation is really insidious because they've had situations where they totally disconnect inmates from their families by discouraging visitations, by making it so difficult for you to come in, by collect phone calls, the first 5 minutes, $8, first 3 minutes, $5. How long can anyone keep that up? So it's all about money right now. What we're talking about, and I want to quote Ice Cube. He called them stationary slave ships. Prisons are stationary slave ships. And also Dr. Alexander quoted that there are more men in prison right now, and she didn't even deal with the issue of the women. There are more men in prison that were ever enslaved in this country in the 1850s.
I'm not adverse to that idea of privatized prisons, but at the same time, the concept is still evolving, and Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles does not use privatized prisons. We've looked at one, or actually we looked at 3 in Kern County. We know that they can do a good job. We know that they can take some of our prisoners, but when we ask to start the programming, then the costs go up and they match our costs, and then there's no savings involved.
What I personally fear with this whole thing is that it becomes so comfortable now to have, it's like slave labor. The penal code section says once you become incarcerated, you are a slave. Our ancestors bled and died so that we wouldn't have to be slaves. So you mean to tell me that you're going to go forget all about the sacrifices made? I'm okay with it for being a slave. But see, the narrative is different. That's not the narrative. The narrative is that you messed up, you broke the law, these are the penalties and consequences. The word slave never even comes into it. I would like to see what happened if, while that judge is hitting that mallet, hitting that wood block, and pronounce this person, you are now a slave in the United States of America, how many of us really go for that?
Since prisons have become a business, which they have not always been, there has not always been a profit associated with locking people up. But now that there are, it behooves the business owners, if you will, to lock up more women.
We have more private prisons in California than any place else in the country. And guess what? Private businesses are to make money. So what's in their best interest? Keep people in jail, find ways to help more people go to jail. So you don't think they're not lobbying at the state capitol for more punishment, longer jail times, because we have all these private prisons and they're growing. And the state is saying, oh, it costs too much for us to keep someone in jail. But the private prisons are saying, oh no, we make money on it. We'll take it from you. We'll work it for you.
When we look at the privatization of prisons, we're also looking at people getting locked up for certain crimes and certain actions, if you will, that should be handled in a different way. Currently, we see a huge problem with domestic sex trafficking, and I say that in that way to separate it from prostitution, which has a different connotation when you're dealing with adult women. The problem with domestic sex trafficking amongst amongst our youth is much different than prostitution or even international sex trafficking. Thousands of young girls in Los Angeles and Orange counties are being trafficked into the sex trafficking industry, into prostitution as 12 and 13-year-olds. And part of the ecological concern is that the young men prey on these young girls, and then the customers, if you will, the Johns, they pay a higher price for young girls, so it is advantageous to pimps to get these young girls and traffic them. The problem, though, is that these girls end up as part of the penal system because of what's going on ecologically, and that is also contributed to the huge increase not only in the prison rates of these young girls, but also the recidivism, because once again we're dealing with mental health issues that are not being adequately addressed, and then you go to an environment at 12 or 13 that doesn't support the remediation of these concerns or these problems.
In some regards, the prison system has taken place of the family, because there have 3 square meals, I have a cot, and sometimes a hot shower, may not be a shower. But when you compare it to the living conditions where they come from, and I looked at this a long time ago. When you walk into a housing development, Jordan Downs, for instance, I hate to name names, but most of these housing developments are made out of brick and mortar. In other words, you don't have walls like these. You can see the outline of the brick inside the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom. The floors are not carpeted, they're linoleum. So when you look at a prison cell, what do you see?
I think the first thing we have to do is really look at the system to figure out what is this system doing. What's the mission of the system? Because I believe the mission of the system is to save dollars and recreate slavery. But that's my personal opinion. It doesn't count for much. But I believe it because of the number of people that are being incarcerated and the work they're doing while they're incarcerated. They're doing fiber optics, they're doing solar paneling and stuff, and yet when they come out of jail, them same jobs they did in jail, they cannot get that same job out here on the street. That's scary. In jail, they made 50 cents an hour for doing it. They can come out here, they've had 4 years of experience doing this job. They'll take somebody who has no experience before they'll take this person and hire this person, because this person's got a record.
From what I could see, they have a profit motive. So they want to comply with whatever statutes, but they don't necessarily want to comply with best practice because it may cost more. So on the adult side, the privatized facilities tend to accept lower level offenders who are less expensive to treat anyway.
Why is the system perpetrating it? Why are we a country that has the largest incarceration rates than any